Greetings to the Nebraska Recycling Council. I am Bob Gedert, President of the National Recycling Coalition. I am your keynote speaker for this morning. I thank you for the invitation and I am honored. As members of the Nebraska Recycling Coalition, you are also members of the National Recycling Coalition, and I thank you for your membership. I am here to speak to you on rediscovering recycling, the evolving perspective of climate change. And part of today's talk will be on defining climate change and some of the causes and effects of climate change. I will also speak on how recycling has net positive impacts, reuse and reduction, positive impacts in the circular economy, climate strategies, mitigation and adaptation strategies, and responses to climate change. So diving in, what is climate change? How is it defined? Since the Industrial Revolution, the global annual temperature has increased in total by a little more than 1 degree Celsius, or about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So how does that affect us? 9 of the 10 warmest years since 1880 have occurred since 2005. The 5 warmest years on record have occurred all since 2015. Global warming occurs when air pollutants collect in the atmosphere and absorb sunlight and solar radiation that have bounced off the Earth's surface. These heat-trapping pollutants, specifically carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and synthetic fluorinated gases, these are known as greenhouse gases, and their impact is called the greenhouse effect. The burning of fossil fuels releases the greenhouse gases that are trapped in the atmosphere, which causes the warming of the Earth. Climate scientists agree that the Earth's rising temperatures are fueling longer and hotter heat waves, more frequent and longer droughts, heavier and longer rainfalls, more powerful hurricanes, deeper and more impactful earthquakes, and stronger wind currents. I'll note some photos that on these following PowerPoint slides, and they're all from Nebraska. Hotter and more fierce forest fires as well too, different and pervasive diseases, animal migration patterns affected, broader and more severe extinction rates, saline water invasion of freshwater systems, regional fuel supply shortages, and of course, this slide notes forest fires, and they're also in Nebraska, not just in California. We've had forest fires, we've had flooding, we've had these events throughout our lifetimes, but they're more severe. They're more the forest fires are more intensive, more fiercely, and more frequent. And that's what these scientists are noting. They're feeling longer and colder winter superstorms than previous winter storms. Changing ocean currents, changing upper wind currents, the jet stream, warming the deep sea waters, warming the Arctic and Antarctic regions, changing direction and intensifying the ocean waves, melting the polar ice caps, melting glaciers, early mountain snow melt, rising sea levels, sinking islands, flooding seashores, inland flash flooding, excessive rainwater, as noted in this flooding from Nebraska here. Climate scientists are also noting a lack of drinking water where drought persists, animal insect extinction rates increasing, migration routes dramatically affected, tropical diseases moving northward in northern hemisphere, and likewise many agricultural pests migrating northward, like this Japanese beetle in the Nebraska field here. Grains and fruits are more difficult to grow, higher food prices as an effect there. Human migration from islands and seashores, added cost to road infrastructure against the rising seas, excessive rainfall and storms. Here's a bridge that was destroyed by flooding here in Nebraska. Life for all creatures, including humans, will change as we constantly react to the forceful climate changes we experience. Natural climates and natural cycles and fluctuations of the earth cannot normally be reversed or modified by humans. However, human-induced effects on the earth and its atmosphere can be reversed, can be mitigated, and better human practices can be adopted to live more in harmony with Earth's natural rhythms. So here's a chart from the IPCC, from the United Nations, and our trending is the red line, the upper line. That shows the likelihood of the Earth trending towards 3, 4 degrees Celsius if we continue with current practices. The blue line is the desired pathway of 1 degree, 1.5 degrees Celsius warming of the Earth. If we mitigate with better programming, more severe practices in our programming towards addressing climate change. What's this do? What's this affect us? Recycling, waste reduction, reuse, composting can affect that line. We can address climate change. The direct impacts of climate change has a direct impact on our operational in local flooding, fires, extreme weather affects staff as well as citizens you serve. Employee absenteeism compounded through extreme weather events, coronavirus threats, hiring, permanent temporary staff difficulties. Global supply chain issues affect local government acquisition of basic supplies to serve local citizens. So you can see the impacts of your local programs there. The regional fuel supplies needed to provide recycling and organics collection. Local regional recycling programs may be deprioritized during emergency relief periods. What is your role during a local emergency, natural event such as that? I suggest creating a priority for your program in emergency relief, such as household hazardous waste collection, hazardous collections, road debris collections, and so forth. Show the meaning of your program during these events. So moving from the impacts of climate to the impacts of recycling, reuse, waste reduction, and the circular economy, and how we can adapt the mitigation and adaptation strategies in our response to climate change. Recycling has some net CO2 impacts in a positive direction. Recycling eliminates the production of new products and services, thereby reducing natural resources, electricity, oil, and water usage. Up recycling, as opposed to down recycling. For instance, aluminum cans to aluminum cans eliminates greenhouse gas releases that occur in the mining and production of ore. Recycling collection, processing, and marketing creates some small amounts of CO2 emissions in the overall process. However, the impact is far less than mining virgin material and creating new products. And so the net CO2 emissions can be calculated through this EPA warm model, and it shows a positive effect on the climate. And you can check that out with the EPA warm model, and I show the website there. Waste reduction and reuse has an even more positive effect on climate through the reduction of natural resource usage, electricity, oil, water usage. Waste reduction and reuse eliminates greenhouse gas releases that occur in the landfilling of these wastes that normally would be produced. Waste reduction and reuse collection and processing and marketing creates very small fractions of CO2 emissions in the overall process. And so total emissions are far, far less than the mining of virgin material and creating new products. And the net CO2 emissions can be calculated again through the warm model from EPA. Composting has a very large positive effect. Food waste reduction eliminates the production of excessive foods and waste, thereby reducing natural resources and electricity, oil, water usage. Composting eliminates the GHG releases that occur in the landfilling of food waste. Composting collection, processing, and marketing create some CO2 emissions in the overall process. Good practices can eliminate some of that. The total emissions impact is far less than the CO2 and methane releases at the landfill. And so this net CO2 emissions can be calculated through the warm model and prove that your program has a net positive effect on the climate. An example, I used to work for the city of Austin, Texas, and I reported to City Council in 2015 the positive effects of our programming. And I noted that the yard waste collection reduces methane gas emissions from landfills by diverting organic waste, food waste, yard and brush debris, and annual reduction of 33,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, which are equivalent to 78,500,000 miles driven by an average passenger vehicle. So you can show the positive effects of yard waste collection. Recycling collection reduces dependence on landfills, including expansion or opening new landfills. And the annual reduction of the Austin recycling program in 2015, 108,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, and that was equivalent to 250 million miles driven by an average passenger vehicle. Again, showing value for the program. Reuse programs increases job creation opportunities by attracting new businesses and helping local businesses grow to process material. And the newer models of the warm model from EPA can now calculate the reuse effects on climate as well too. Um, Moving on to circular economy and the economic effects of recycling can now be uh, measured through the circular economy and the climate strategies that we utilize. Waste reduction, reuse, and recycling support the new circular economy. The circular economy is a key strategy towards climate change around the world. Moving away from the linear economy. We're moving towards the circular economy. And this is taking effect through the economic systems around the world. The linear economy is heavily laden with mining, processing, transportation, all emitting carbon dioxide and methane. The linear economy is built on the concept of make, use, waste, required new products to replace old products with virgin material. The circular economy creates cascades of circular uses of products through reuse, recycling, and composting. Through cascades, we prevent items from falling into waste as they retain economic value. So we're seeing more economic value in the recycling reuse categories, composting. We're seeing waste as being wasteful. The circular economy places more value on waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting, considers waste an economic, wasteful practice. The circular economy conserves fuel, prefers the use of renewable energy, and attempts to be self-sustaining, all positive elements addressing climate change. And businesses around the world are embracing this direction. Temporary employee, this is into the mitigation and adaptation strategies. Temporary employee contracts for employee emergency conditions are consideration for mitigation for climate impacts. Extra recruitment strategies for long-term employees. Consider rewriting employee job descriptions to include working in extreme weather conditions. Employee training for emergency conditions and customer service within extreme weather conditions. Employee PPE for extreme weather conditions. So this is adapting, knowing climate is going to be hitting us. We're adapting our programming to these effects. Recognize employees' suggestions on how to approach in a safer manner and provide proper safety equipment. Recognize superior employees with awards and newsletter articles of their good work. Replace diesel vehicles with natural gas and electric vehicles. And there's a photo down there of an electric vehicle on the road. Go renewable energy through a regional contract. Minimize your fossil fuel usage. If utilizing a fuel like natural gas, diesel, or LNG, do you have alternative source contracts in place during emergency weather conditions where there might be restrictions on the transportation of fuel? More mitigation and adaptation strategies. Go rooftop solar. Charge your vehicles and tools off of solar rather than on the grid. Replace all lighting with high efficiency LED lamps for conservation of energy. Does your building have backup power sources in the event of severe weather? Enforce a policy of no single-use plastic bottles, use reusables. Does your collection vehicles have adequate heating and air conditioning for the extreme weather for the safety of your employees? Remember the employees during the extreme weather swings. In the event of a flooding, are you protected by sump pumps? In the event of tornadoes, do your employees know where to take cover? In long range planning, integrate climate change mitigation into your materials management strategies action plan or your zero waste plan. Actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions while increasing resilience are win-win to your programming and to the community. Disaster debris response management is a critical domain at the intersection of materials management and climate mitigation and climate adaptation. Municipalities are increasingly establishing their own climate action and resilience plans. Be a part of it. A further development for many local municipalities is to coordinate their climate planning efforts regionally as opposed to operating independently. Regional cooperation allows for the sharing of resources and saves taxpayer money. The many goals listed in the plan prioritize equity and resilience and encourage coordination with higher levels of government and stress the need for public participation in policy development. Many times as we build new planning for our recycling program, it is always good government to include the public in the planning. Frame the local planning around resilience planning instead of climate planning. Build local resilience. So how can recycling, waste reduction, reuse, composting build resilience to climate change? And in summary, waste reduction, reuse, recycling, composting has a net reversal of carbon dioxide emissions from the efforts of landfilling. It limits landfilling and it contributes to climate change. It creates local jobs in the local area. It contributes to a circular economy to limit need for transportation of goods and services. It creates local resources for long-term responses to natural resources and natural disasters, storms, flooding, fires, etc. So what actions can you take? Establish a sustainable materials management plan or a zero waste plan that integrates climate change responses and mitigation efforts. And integrate the climate change into your plan, your materials management planning. Participate in regional climate planning efforts and integrate materials management, disaster debris collection into the action plan. Document your program's carbon footprint through the WARM model and display the results to your local governing elected officials. It's important to show the net worth of your programming to your local officials, particularly in emergency management situations. Take physical actions to reduce your program's carbon footprint through reduction in use of fossil fuels, reduction in electricity usage, reduction in water usage, and operates more efficiently. Educate your employees to be prepared to assist in the next natural disaster. Adapt your program to the new normal. Educate citizens about how they can address climate change through living a greener lifestyle, which includes the 3 R's: waste reduction, reuse, and recycling. We preached the waste reduction, reuse, and recycling in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's all important in 2022 as well. Turning the page to funding opportunities, and that is ever more important today as it was in the past. How can we fund our programs? I turn you towards the US EPA grant opportunities, and I ask you to contact US EPA Region 7. They will have some grant announcements probably late September of 2022. That's coming up soon. The Swiffer grants are coming out, solid waste infrastructure for recycling. These funds were approved by Congress in November of last year. Save Our Seas Grant 2.0 Act from the infrastructure grant that Congress approved in November of 15th of 2021. And these grants have, like I said, the grant announcements haven't been out, but they will be coming out real soon. And there will be non-competitive and competitive grants for local materials management, municipal recycling, and waste management systems. And I ask you to look for this because there's a tremendous amount of funding, more funding than I've ever seen in my career. That's going to be available in these grant opportunities. There's also reduce, reuse, recycle, education, and outreach grants, REO grants, that will be coming out in this same time frame, expected late September of 2022. And these education and outreach grants are intended to improve material recycling, recovery management, reduction, and EPA will be looking to develop some toolkits as well. And so look for these grant opportunities as well. Two more grant opportunities available on a regional basis: sustainable materials management available in each region, and the national anaerobic digestion grants, one award in each region as well. And again, expect these announcements in late September of 2022. The last slide that I have for you is National Recycling Congress, sponsored by the NRC, National Recycling Coalition. This is a virtual conference that's going to be in November 9th and 10th. And I'm asking you to register for this conference. There will be reuse and recycling programs from around the nation and around the globe that will be featured. Your executive director, Haley, received a Murray J. Fox Scholarship that was announced at a previous National Recycling Congress. And we will have further scholarships announced, as well as national awards for programs, and featuring a lot of discussions around EPR and other issues of note around the nation. So see what's happening around the nation. Register for the National Recycling Congress. And as you gain access to this PowerPoint, there's the registration page link on this page. November 9th and 10th, it's a virtual Congress, and you don't need to travel. You can watch it at the leisure on your laptop, November 9th and 10th. Thank you very much for inviting me to be your keynote speaker on rediscovering recycling. Please enjoy your conference throughout the day, and feel free to give me a holler. My email address is robert.gedert@gmail.com. Thank you.